one important point is that the number that we're seeing, as I said, does not include everybody in terms of those who are out of work, underemployed, or have decided to stop seeking work. Out of the officially unemployed, and then the people working part-time for economic reasons, and those who want a job but haven't looked for work in the last month or in the last year, you get to 43.2 million people. That's more than the entire population of California. Robert Reich is the former Labour Secretary under Bill Clinton, author of the System, Who Rigged It, excuse me, and How to Fix It, and he's also joins me, I think, from California. Mr. Secretary, the way you put it, I'm reading your tweets, 14.7 unemployment rate. It doesn't include those not actively looking for work or anyone who said they're employed but absent from the work for other reason. We know why this number's so bad. What troubles you most about it?
Well, Richard, there's nothing good about it at all. What troubles me is how difficult it's going to be to get out of the trough we are in. This deep recession, depression, whatever you want to call it, was not brought about like the Great Depression or the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. No, this was brought about by a pandemic, and the pandemic is still with us. In fact, in the United States, the rate of deaths keeps on rising, even though many states are relaxing their stay-at-home rules. And that means that a lot of consumers are going to be reluctant to even begin to go to the malls, or into airplanes or into any place where there are a lot of other people. It also means that many workers don't have money, which means that they can't buy even if they wanted to. So it's going to take some time to get out of this trough.
You said as well, you said in your various tweets, there's 30 million Americans filed for unemployment. Billionaires got 282 billion richer in less than a month. I'm assuming that's because the stock market has gone up so much and the various plans and points that have been put in place. You say also tax the rich. What do you mean by that?
Well, the coronavirus bills that have come out of Congress, although have been helpful, they also have included some tax cuts for the very, very wealthy and some bailouts of the very, very wealthy and big corporations. And that's unnecessary. All of the money, and we shouldn't be cutting taxes of the very wealthy right now. All money should be directed where it's most needed. And where it's most needed is to middle class, working class, poor people who desperately, right now, have got to have money to pay the rent and to get food on the table and to protect their families. That's the number one priority.
What does that mean, though, in terms of the next action? I mean, the economies are reopening, and that creates its own issues of healthcare safety, which we can put to one side. But for this, let's concentrate just on the economics of this. What policies do you now want to see as reopening gets underway?
Well, two things, Richard. Number one, as I just said, you've got to get money into the hands of average people, working class and poor people, because they're the ones whose spending is necessary to get the economy going again. In the United States, about 2/3 of economic activity is consumer spending, not government, not exports. I mean, it's got to be consumers. They cannot do that given that they've lost their jobs and that there's been such a remarkable downturn. About almost 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. If they're not collecting a paycheck, it means that they just simply don't have the wherewithal to continue living and buying and fulfilling the necessities of life. And the other thing that is absolutely critical, you said a moment ago, let's put the pandemic, let's put the health crisis to one side. You can't be put it to one side. This health crisis is the biggest single obstacle to the economy getting back on track. As long as people are afraid, as long as the number of deaths and the number of infections keeps on rising in the United States, there's no way that the economy can really successfully reopen.
Right. No, I get that. But what I'm talking about is what sort of real policies do you have to introduce? For instance, do you think there should be another helicopter money of direct to Americans in terms of spending. Do you think they should delay, the IRS should delay once again, the tax filing deadline from, as it was from April to July, now maybe till September, October, to keep more money in the economy? What practical policy would you implement to help encourage that consumer side of the economy?
Well, the most important practical policy for consumers right now, in terms of getting money into their pockets, would be to do something that some other countries in Northern Europe have done, and that is to get money to people by basically getting money to businesses that promise to keep people on their payrolls, even though people are staying home. But that kind of direct payment to businesses is something the United States has tried to do, but it did it through the banks. And once you do it through the banks, you have the problem that we ran into, and that is the banks basically favored their own customers, gave a lot of the money to bigger businesses rather than small businesses, and also raked off a substantial amount of money, $10 billion for themselves. No, you can do it much more directly by using direct deposit, the way in which a lot of Americans, a big majority of Americans, are actually using direct deposit in the other direction for years, and that was with regard to withholding from their paychecks. Just reverse that process, get the money directly to Americans right now.
Use the tax code, use the IRS, and use the facilities that's already there and that have been tried and tested over many decades, as we all know, who are have to pay everyone. Thank you, Professor. Good to have you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you very much indeed